What is good? Let's have some fun. It's the Fundamism podcast with your host Paul J. Long and all things fun. We'll let the fun begin. Woo! What is good, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Paul Long coming to you live on the Fundamism podcast. We, of course, are here, as always, to encourage everyone listening to have a little more fun in life. Because if you don't feel like you can have a little more fun in life, maybe, just maybe, you should try harder. I'm super excited about our guest this week. She is the smartest individual I have ever interacted with. And that's not saying a whole lot because I don't get out much. But Miss Allison Edwards, how are you, ma'am?
Dr. Allison Edwards.
Oh, snaps. I messed that one up. My bad.
No, it's okay. Actually, it happens all the time. And I think part of it is my own fault for being approachable and not all, pretentious and whatnot.
Sure. So that's something that I struggle with regularly. I actually have, I'm a speaker by trade, and I'm getting the opportunity to do some work with the Air Force. And I've been working closely with Captain Arnold. She just got promoted from lieutenant to captain, and it's kind of a big deal, but I never know what to call her. So I'm like, Captain Arnold, what's up? And she's like, call me Celeste. And I'm like, I feel like you earned that title, though.
Yeah.
Is that something that you struggle with?
Oh, absolutely. Because, again, because I want to be approachable. Like I'm taking care of people, building a relationship with them. And so I struggled with, am I Dr. Edwards? Am I Dr. Allison? Am I Allison? And people always ask, what should I call you? I'm like, I don't care. Like, just pick one, stick with it. Don't stick with it. Change it up. Whatever you want.
Well, the more I get to know you, I'm coming up with lots of things to call you. So just
very good.
Get ready, sister.
All right, sounds good.
So as always, we're going to start with the question that everyone wants to know. What do you do for fun? You're going through the struggle. You want to get back to you. You want to have a little bit of an escape from whatever you're dealing with mentally. What do you do for fun?
A lot. I actually wrote a recent blog post about this. I finished up residency, so the sort of apprenticeship formal training after you go through your medical schooling.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I finished up a little bit over 2 years ago now.
Oh, sorry about that.
Hey,
relevance.
listen. Still big deal.
All right.
Because I just this summer wrote a blog post about 2 years out. I am just getting used to the idea of free time.
Okay.
And what the heck I should be doing with it. And, what are my hobbies? And, sort of the permission to have fun, right? Which I think, a lot of driven professional people and everyone, frankly, struggles with. So anyway, in this, I listed I love photography and, I love being outdoors and I love reading the newspaper over a cup of coffee. Like all of these things recharge me. And we just moved back from Denver at the same time that I finished up residency. And there is nothing like being like out on a hike. Like that is my fun. That is my recharge. That renews my batteries. That's everything.
And you just recently got back from a hike, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm not kidding. My quads are still on fire. Yes. We were at Glacier National Park this past Labor Day weekend. It was unbelievable. My husband is a junkie for solitude and kind of getting out there. And so it's my own fault when I set out on a hike with him because he'll want to go to the top or go to the end regardless.
Right.
We call it summit fever. Yeah, can't turn around, got to go to the top.
I got a fever.
Yes.
The only prescription is more cowbell, though.
Not more summit. That's fair. But anyway, so we take off on this hike and it's like 6.8 miles with, I think, like a 2,000-foot gain, which is fine. But we get to that point, and he sees that there's this lookout tower that's another 2,000 feet over a mile. He's like, let's go do this. And I'm trekking, 1 foot in front of the other, just feeling my quads get, a little tired.
Oh, yeah.
But we make it to the top of the Continental Divide and just kind of look out and you could see the forest fires. You can see the places where in the past the forest had burned. You can see the lush, forest. You can see the clouds. You can see the glaciers, the peaks, just the wind, the cold, the solitude up there. And and then kind of bounced our way down the mountain again and woke up in the morning just, disaster
Beat.
in the quads. Like everything hurts.
Well, so how does that relate to our listeners? Of course, Fundamism, if you're just joining us and this is the first podcast you've listened to, are the fundamentals of a fun and optimistic lifestyle. So whatever you do for fun that gets you out of a mental headspace and gets you more to where you aspire to be, that's your fundamental. That's something that you do that creates Fundamism for you. That's this philosophy. And of course, it's founded on the principle of fun. And Allison, I know I'm extremely excited to explore this relationship between you and I. And there's a very specific reason why. We met through a mutual friend named Matt Basinger, who is a Kansas City ambassador. I mean, he's just a tremendous guy. He is the chief fun officer, what I like to call him, of Swell Spark, who likes to create memorable experiences in folks' lives through axes and alcohol, which is always a plus, Blade and Timber, as well as Escape KC. But anyway, I asked him, I said, do you know of anybody that would be great for the podcast? And he said, Allison Edwards. She's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. She's a doctor, and she's got a tremendous story, which we're going to get into. Yeah. But obviously, you know, what kind of podcast host would I be if I didn't vet my guest to ensure I knew what I was getting into? So we had lunch, and we had a conversation, and it was great. I felt like we had a little bit of a connection. And at the end, I said, so what do you think? I would love for you to be a part of this podcast. And you said, I'm not certain. You said, Paul, I'm not ready to commit. And so I was a little taken aback. And I was like, okay, this is good. Why? And you're making faces. Don't make faces. This is awesome. This doesn't happen every day. And so I say, well, tell me more about that. And you said, well, you know, I'm really trying to create something. Our healthcare system needs help. Yeah. And so my brand is important to me. And I'm going to be honest, I listened to the first 2 episodes of your podcast, and I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand what you were trying to accomplish. And I looked at you with excitement. Like somebody might say that to another individual and wonder how they were going to receive it. What I appreciated about it is prior to recording a podcast, I never listened to a podcast. I don't know what a podcast is supposed to sound like. I just know that we, you, myself, and many others have a tremendous opportunity to reveal fun and passion and life to others in life. And I thought the podcast might be a good platform to help me do that. That said, you guided me and said, here's what you could potentially do to make it a little more relevant and to stick a little bit more. And you gave me some feedback, and I've started to incorporate that. Well, you saw the Travis Kelce episode, who, mind you, you didn't know who he was. So
I think I know how to spell his name.
Yes, fair enough. But you didn't when you said that to me the first time. And you reached out and you said, I want to be a part.
Yeah.
Like, listening to that episode, I get it now.
Yeah.
So I just want to first off say, I admire you for your honesty. Like, there's a lot of folks in this world that aspire to get better. And, you know, the Marines have a saying, I don't know if you've ever heard this.
No, okay.
Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And so what I take from that is I feel like we have a tremendous platform to help people, but we're not always willing to take the steps to grow and get better accordingly. And so you providing that feedback for me is something that not a lot of folks are comfortable in doing, and it helped me improve. So my question with that huge, long setup is your passion for development and growth and working on yourself is critical in the success of your business as a doctor. I call all of that your foundation, your personal foundation. So where does that stem from? Is that something that you've always had innately, or is it something that came with time?
Oh, good question. So you have to decide to go into medicine from a relatively early age. Well, not have to. That's not true. You can sort of take a non-traditional path. But if you're sort of on the straight and narrow, you know, in high school, you got to start making those grades. And, you know, even in college, keep on that scientific path sort of so you can matriculate into med school. And so...
Matriculate.
Yeah. That's like a $10 word, but like a 5-cent word would
nailed
do.
It.
You can go to med school. So it was, I mean, to be honest, yeah, of course, you know, that was part of my plan from an early age, but, you know, reflecting back as I've gotten older, it was also because I'm an agreeable person, and I had always wanted to make my teachers happy and my parents and everything. And so, you're smart, you do well in school. People are like, oh, you should be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, something like that. And so it was almost a response to making people, impress people, which is so stupid to say, but it's true, because with my 18-year-old brain, I was like, oh, well, this is what smart people do. This is what people are telling me to do. I'm going to do it. And so I, in undergrad, I actually took so many like political science classes and ethics and philosophy classes that I got invited to their graduation party. And I was like, oh, no, this is a mistake. Like I don't belong here.
But
like,
you have alcohol, right? I'm there.
Right. Yeah, right. And so it's like, one of those things. And then like the first semester of med school, it was like November in Kansas City, crummy weather. And we're learning about genetics and neoplasia, again, $10 words, which basically mean, the DNA that makes us up. And also,
thank you, because I had no idea.
and when DNA goes wrong, which is neoplasia, which is cancer. So I'm like, weather's getting bad. We're learning about these horribly depressing illnesses. And like, it hit me, like a truck. I was just like, oh my God, I might be this might not be for me. Like, I love the science, and with time, I've become quite passionate about the science behind medicine and whatnot. But what I found was that everything else around the medical experience was what invigorated me and what gave me passion. And so, as med school went on, working with community gardens gave me my passion, and working with the free clinics and working on what in medicine we call the social determinants of health, i.e., everything else that happens outside of the doctor's office. Like, that's what makes somebody healthy. I have a small interaction with people as a family practice doctor, tiny. But what matters so much more to everyone is what happens outside of it. And so that was where, the foundation of how I got here was me trying to impress people.
Sure.
Okay, let's just be honest,
wow,
right?
Thanks.
Yeah. It's stupid. And what
it's
people
not stupid. I think
like,
it's common.
Well, yeah. And so, when I talk to pre-med students, I'm like, really? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Was your dad behind this? Like, can I help?
Sure.
But it going through, and again, because I'm an agreeable person who likes to make people happy, I didn't quit. I kept moving on, and now I'm on the other side of it. And I realized that even though it was a decade plus to get from, an 18-year-old who wasn't sure, who's kind of doing things because that was the right thing to do, to being fully trained out on my own, running my own clinic, doing my thing, I can now refocus on that passion, which is, the community, what people are doing outside of the doctor's office and how that impacts health. So it's kind of a public health view to medicine, but I think it's super important.
Well, speaking of importance, you're mentioning health, obviously, so I thought it fitting. I see that you're in your scrubs today, so I appreciate you dressing the part. Did you come straight from work?
Of course. Yes.
Awesome. I wanted to do my part in helping you in your day. So if you're listening on a streaming platform and you're not watching on YouTube, we're coming to you today from one of the coolest spots in all of Kansas City. It's Pro Athlete Inc. And, of course, Andrew Dallas is an amazing individual. He's the COO. He's going to be on the podcast. We've actually already had that interview, so that'll be coming up relatively soon. They put employees first in everything that they do. So we're coming to you right now from the spa. We got our massage chairs. My feet currently are in the water of, and tell me, Allison, how do you feel about pedicures in general or spas?
I'm totally grossed out by
Why?
that.
Tell me more.
I just feel like they got foot fungus all over them.
Yeah.
There is I do not have evidence to back up that claim. That is like one of those like weird isms that I have. I'm just like, can't do it.
I love it. Well, regardless, one of my fundamentals, I think it's important to pamper yourself from time to time.
Yeah.
People have given me grief my
Absolutely.
whole life. My best friends, John Stoner, you've heard his name before. He always gives me grief. I get my eyebrows done. I get pedicures. I get massages. And it makes me use the word invigorated earlier.
Yeah.
Like, those are my fundamentals. I think it's phenomenal. And you feel something just amazing when somebody else is treating you. So I like the motto, treat yourself, from Parks and Recreation. So today we're treating ourselves.
Yes.
So Allison, working through Foundation, obviously your own personal growth and development is important to you. After your 10 plus years in education, what do you do now to hone your craft and get better and more well-rounded as a doctor to offer the best possible service to your patients?
Oh yeah, no, it's not a very exciting answer, but we read a lot.
Do you really?
Yeah, I mean, and so that's that's why I made the career change to move from the sort of rushed visits, kind of cookie cutter assembly line medicine to one where I can spend more time with my patients. Because it also means that if somebody comes to me with something I'm not familiar with, or with maybe something that's not very clear cut, I can then turn around and use all my resources to read and put together the puzzle, if you will.
Sure.
That's kind of boring, sitting in my office reading, kind of clicking through things. And then, going to conferences and connecting with people and stuff too is a lot more fun.
Sure. Well, I know that you not only pride yourself in your own continued development, but you mentioned that you blog as well. And so what that tells me is that you find the development of others important and sharing your experiences with others. So talk to us a little bit about what you blog about and what the purpose of that process is.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, I also kind of roll my eyes at the fact that I'm a blogger. This is who isn't?
Have you guys read my blog? It's all about the proper amount of tea bags to put in.
I know. It's so terrible. It's just because you can take two fingers and type on a keyboard does not mean that you should be blogging. So, judge me for what you will, but yes, I do have a little blog project.
But with a significant partner, right? You get to guest blog for
the American Academy of Family Physicians.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's the type of thing. It's like the imposter syndrome sort of thing.
This is where you offer me false humility right now. Is this
no,
just take the compliment, sister? You're doing the damn thing, and I appreciate it.
But it's also you have that moment where you're like, well, this is what I think,
exactly.
And I like me,
right?
So I'm gonna write down what I think.
Exactly.
And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed writing. I took a class in college called Reading and Writing the Nonfiction Essay, which my husband was like, dude, that's all of college. That's all you do is read and write nonfiction.
Yes.
And I was like, no. And it was really fun to take a really close look at David Foster Wallace, may he rest in peace, and things like that where you're like,
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. brother. But there are real, and Atul Gawande, Malcolm Gladwell, really good nonfiction writers out there. And so it's kind of fun to consider myself in their ranks, of course.
Yeah.
Except not really.
Well, I hope so. You know this about me, and I'm not proud to say it. I'm not an avid reader. I've read in my day. The interesting thing about me and my quest for development is we're all different types of learners. So I like to observe people.
Yeah.
I like to see how they interact and see what they do and hear from personal experience. And so reading to me hasn't always interested me, but I'll tell you what, every time I do read, I always get something from it.
Of course.
The challenge that I have in reading is I have such a short-term memory, and I told you this before. By the time I get down to the end of whatever page I'm on, I had forgotten already what I read above. So I'm constantly rereading over and over again. I say that to let you know that this morning was a pivotal moment in my career, if that's what you want.
We don't know how to pronounce words.
Yeah,
we
I don't
talked
either.
about this.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Home Depot, is that right? That's right.
I believe so.
Okay. I sent my book to the publisher today.
Congratulations.
So 3 versions of content editing. Travis Kelsey actually wrote the foreword.
That's awesome.
A portion of proceeds are going to pediatric cancer research, so supporting the healthcare industry and the growth in the field that many children need help with. The book went to publishing today, and I couldn't be more excited, I hope, as an avid reader, that you... Oh, she's clapping. I feel...
Yes.
This is a humble brag and a pitch,
yes.
just so you guys know. Swoop up the book, Fundamism, Connecting to Life Through Fun, when it drops. It's going to be out in the next month, maybe 2 months. But as an avid reader, I hope, Allison, that you will give me your candid thoughts, as I'm certain that you will. Foundation. So we're wrapping up the F in fun and what makes you you. One of the things that interests me about the healthcare field is there's something called compassion fatigue. And so as doctors or nurses or whatever it may be, you see so much heartache all the time and so many people that are sick or unhappy or whatever it may be. And I got to believe that sometimes, you become a little bit of numb, or you feel a little numbness to it, right? And that's what they call compassion fatigue. And at times you feel guilty because you know that you should feel some form of emotion as a result of this person's heartache or pain. But sometimes because you see it so much and you're always in it, you don't. And as a result, you feel guilty. So my first question is, do you ever experience that? And my follow-up question would be, how the heck do you stay grounded and in the right mind frame being surrounded by sickness?
Yeah. No, I mean, if any healthcare professional tells you that they haven't felt that, they're saving face, right? It got to the point during residency where I refused to watch dramatic movies, shows, etc.
Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started. No, but like good, Oscar-worthy productions. I'm like, I can't handle more drama.
Sure.
I'm done. Like comedies, fluff, no more. Like
Right.
if I'm relaxing, I gotta relax. Like I gotta get away from it.
Relaxing. I like what you just did there.
Yeah. By the way, I have my massage chair on. I'm really enjoying this
that.
spa experience. But yeah, no, it's. I mean, you've touched on sort of the third rail of medicine is that we're all human, we're all fallible, and it will drain a person to bear the emotion of the people that you're caring for, and sort of if you truly have empathy and you're really feeling that, it is exhausting. And then you can't take it home because you have a family at home and you have to sort of turn off, turn on, and so you do. In numb is almost like a negative word, but like you kind of compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And say,
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, and kind of say, well, this is me at work, and like these things truly suck. And if you ever go out, for drinks with a group of doctors, you're going to hear terrible stories. You're going to think that they're terrible people because ultimately, if you can't laugh about how terrible things are, you can't cope. And so we don't talk about this in public, but you kind of go and you let it out and you talk about all the terrible stuff and move on. But yeah, no, it's incredibly draining, and it correlates too with like burnout, right? And so if you are worn out enough and this compassion fatigue sets in enough that you don't even feel that guilt that you were talking about, I'm so worn out that I don't even feel guilty about being worn out, then you settle into burnout, and then everybody suffers. You're no longer in a fulfilling career.
Sure. Your
patients aren't getting good care. You're making mistakes potentially, and you don't care that you're making mistakes because you have no compassion or guilt about it because you're so burnt out. And that's what scares me about medicine is because, and soapbox 1 second, but is because the more consolidated and the more corporate medicine gets, the more it becomes a business, the more that compassion gets removed from the doctor-patient relationship and the entire infrastructure of the healthcare system. And that worries me a lot. And again, it's kind of why, I chose the career path I did.
So you mentioned two things that really stuck out to me there. So first of all, the ability to laugh when dealing with something, right? I think that's crucial. And especially we could talk about this and have talked about this in our society today with the politics, the way that they are and the way that society is. I mean, we're so sensitive to everything, right? And so many folks feel like they can't joke and laugh about things anymore. And so what you said is important to me, and it actually reminded me of one of my favorite quotes, Mr. Mark Twain, who was an author. Did you know that?
I've heard of him.
Yes. I read a quote one time. I read a quote once. He said, "Humor is the great thing, the saving thing. Once it crops up, all of our irritations and resentments slip away, and a sunny spirit takes their place." And I feel like humor is one of my core fundamentals. One of the philosophy of Fundamism for me is based in humor and laughter and fun. And so I really appreciate you saying that. Mm-hmm. And I know that it gets you through a difficult space. The second thing that you brought up was how doctors cope and compassion fatigue and how you take this stuff home with you. Now, many of you guys that are listening didn't go through 10 years of medical school or education. You could be like myself, who's not a very smart man, but enjoy leading people and having fun and created a culture of excellence and excitement in whatever organization you work with. I'm certain that Allison's story can resonate with any one of you in what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a troubled employee that you just can't connect with. They're not showing up to work, and you're trying to get to the root of the problem. You take that home with you. You had a spat with your spouse, and you're really struggling to figure out what's going on between you. You take that to work with you. All of these things impact us on a regular basis. And that right there is the whole goal behind this podcast, is to help folks get through whatever challenging times that they're going through and to find what gives them strength and to figure out a plan and developing next steps. Because
Absolutely.
I think that's the most important thing. Like, you could be going through the struggle, but the moment that you just continue wallowing in it and you don't define a plan to get out is the moment that all of a sudden misery really creeps up,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So understanding others' perspectives, that's the you.
Yeah.
And this is something that I cannot wait to talk to you about this, because we didn't even talk about it at lunch. And this is the whole reason why we got connected. Understanding others' perspectives is huge. That's the you in f.u.n. For you specifically, I know that it's one of the guiding forces behind you in medicine and your desire for reform for healthcare. I read an amazing article on you in the Kansas City Star.
It wasn't just about me.
It was a collective group, but you were a catalyst.
Okay, sure.
Okay. And I would love for you to explain to me and our listeners what that was all about.
Yeah. And I mean, to give a little bit of context as to how I ended up here, and to kind of finish that story, is that I dropped out of healthcare after 10 years of education. I was like, screw it, I'm done. And I opened up my own clinic, right? And so I opened up what's called a direct primary care clinic, where instead of working for insurers and corporations, I work directly for my patients via a cash transaction, which sounds really revolutionary. And people are like, wow, that's crazy. No, man, this is how it was done like 100 years ago.
Sure.
How every other industry.
So I got my physicals back in the day.
Yeah. And I mean, this is how you buy jeans. This is commerce, right?
Exactly.
And, frankly, healthcare is a commodity, whether, it just is in the U.S. And so let's treat it like one. Let's have it fairly and transparently priced. So that's the context where this is coming from. And so I am not the only direct primary care provider in the metro. There are 23 of us operating in this sort of model, and we're all small mom and pop type, clinics. And so we got together, and we get together quarterly, have drinks, have dinner, talk about best practices, kind of share how business is going. And one of our members said, hey, John Oliver just did this piece on relieving debt that is brought on by medical bills. And he was like, it'd be super easy for us to, pool together some money and donate to this nonprofit in order to wipe away debt here in the region. And this sort of, we talked about this over a couple of months. And finally, at the end of last year, we're like, let's just do it. Let's put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. And there were 19 of us that ended up pooling money. We came up with about $11,000 to donate to this organization. It's called RIP Medical Debt. And they have a really interesting story. So they were founded by debt collectors. So like the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
So these
I used to be one of those, for the record.
Are you serious?
For a car, it was not good.
Yeah, no, of course not. Like, I can't imagine.
It's the most miserable thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
Yes.
chasing people down for money that they don't have, ultimately.
Yeah. And then threatening to repo their car if they don't pay.
Yeah, right?
It's the worst.
You can't even repo health. I don't know how you would do that.
Thanks
right?
for bringing this up, for the record, making me feel like a terrible individual.
No. There's hope. There's hope.
Okay.
There's hope. Don't worry. We're going somewhere.
Oh, yeah, because it was founded by debt collectors. Okay, keep going.
Okay,
Sorry.
hold on. Debt collectors founded this.
All right.
Come out and don't wallow.
All right,
Come
call.
out. But anyway, so these debt collectors were like, man, we hate what we do,
Sure.
basically.
Yeah.
But they were like, if we made a nonprofit where we still bought or went after debt, like we found debt that had not been paid, and this is, I'm going to try and not get too much in the weeds here, but if we found this debt that couldn't be paid, wasn't being paid, the bills had gone out years ago, like this is not going to be collected on. What if we bought that, founded a nonprofit, and raised donations to basically clear that bill, just pay it off? Because ultimately, once a medical bill has not been collected for years, essentially, gets sent to these collections companies, and it's worthless almost. Like, the ratio, I believe, is $1 will buy a $100 debt, if you will. So it's a ratio of 1 to 100. So it's worthless.
Basically, it's their profit margin, though, right?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. No, it's
sorry.
terrible. So don't go back to debt collecting. Don't. We're not doing debt collecting. So what's cool is that this nonprofit, basically, what we said is, we came to them. We said, we have a little bit over $11,000. We want to wipe away medical bills that have been sent to collections here in the Kansas City metro area. And it took about 6 months of working with them and them kind of fine-tuning their algorithms and working with different companies. But they were able to find I think it was 784 people who then had $1.4 million worth of medical debt erased. Huge. And so, and we were motivated to do that, to essentially to do the right thing. We're all patients. Like, every single one of us is vulnerable and could potentially end up in the hospital, either, through no fault of our own, somebody runs a red light, or maybe even for like a happy reason, like you have a kid.
Yes.
Like that's an expensive process. And so we are all in the position of being fragile from a medical financing standpoint. And so this is our way of saying, hey, this system is not ideal. Let's, absolve this debt, abolish it, and kind of move on.
So these former patients, existing patients who have this debt, they don't know that this is happening.
Right.
They go to the mail, the what do you call that?
The golden envelope, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, where do you get that from, though? The mailbox?
Yes.
That's the word that I was looking for.
They go to the mailbox.
Eureka! I figured it out.
What? That's only for like bills and weird advertisements.
Gold envelopes.
And gold envelopes now. Which actually, we were like, man, do you think people are going to check their mail? Like, do you think they'll see it and they're like, oh, this is another scam?
Yes, I would have.
Yeah, no, totally. Which is why we were really happy to work with Annie Marceau at the Star to say, like, this is something that's important. This is real. It's not a fraud.
Yes.
People are getting their debt relieved. And not only that, but the way that it worked out was that it actually was removed from their credit report as well. So even though it had been sent to collections, it was wiped from their credit report. It was paid, move on.
So understanding others' perspective, basically what I just heard you say, doing the right thing, guided by your heart, trying to figure out there's an opportunity gap where somebody can fill a void, and you guys serve that purpose. And it's funny that so often people do these good deeds, and it's unfortunately not as common as you would hope that you're skeptical when it happens, right? And so you had to specifically say, well, this isn't a scam. So I recently filed 3 trademarks for Fundamism.
Oh, cool.
Super exciting stuff, right? My lawyer says, hey, won't hear anything for several months until I contact you with next steps. A month later, I get a bill from a company that says $1,395 to file these 3 trademarks. So I reach out to my lawyer and I say, hey, just double checking. Says that I have, 14 days to respond to this letter. I'm going to get this paid. I just want to make sure that it's legit because you said I would be hearing from you. He said that's a scam. So there are folks out there that are looking to see when you file for federal help, right?
Yeah.
Or debt or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And they're seizing that as an opportunity to take advantage of you, which is the exact opposite of you and understanding others' perspectives. So I could just relate to what you're saying, and I think that's why it's so important that we hear stories like yours. And it's challenging for somebody like you to give yourself praise and to even hear people give you praise. I would argue that you need it, though.
No.
Like every time that you get somebody saying that you did a great job, it feels great. And while it makes you uncomfortable, it drives you to do more, right? Because you see that there's a need for it. So thinking through next steps, which is the end and fun. We talked about foundation, understanding others' perspectives. Well, in the you and understanding others' perspectives, you have a knack for showing a genuine interest in others. And that includes being direct when you need to be and being honest. And so oftentimes people struggle with that skill set because they're afraid to rub people the wrong way or maybe not form a strong bond. And you and your doctor-patient relationship, connections are imperative, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what advice do you have, whether somebody's a doctor or a manager or a frontline cook at a local restaurant, what advice do you have in connecting with people? Like, how do you find what's been the most successful for you in driving trust-built relationships within your client base?
Oh man, this is such a hard question to answer because it's like asking oh God, this is going to sound so pretentious. It's like asking an Olympic diver, like, how do you do that dive? They're
Are
like,
you comparing yourself to an Olympic diver right now?
Yeah, I'm an Olympic. No, oh my God, I went off the high dive for the first time in years the other day. That is scary, man. I almost would climb back down.
So for the record, how often does somebody say, as an adult male or female, I went off the high dive for the first time? Like, that's Fundamism right there. What created this environment that you jumped off the high dive?
We learned about this thing called the pool check at the public pool where they make the kids get out.
Okay.
So the adults can play.
Yeah.
It was like permission to play.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like,
Adult swim.
Adult swim. And I was like, oh man, like I'm going to go down each of the slides. I'm going to go off all the diving boards.
Yes.
And I got to the top top of the high dive. And I was like, oh, there's a reason I don't do this. This is very scary. But
you
I
did
did
it.
it. I penciled. I didn't dive.
Ooh,
oh, I totally.
That's
you
all
know,
right.
just
I have
like,
a pencil as well.
I know, like the little kids were like, pencil. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, they know what they're doing.
Exactly.
So like I penciled. It was fine.
Listen, I knew more as a kid in terms of enjoying life and having fun and not worrying about what other people thought of me than I do today.
Yeah.
So if a kid says something to me, I'm going to listen at first just to see if it has merit. And oftentimes it does.
Yeah, pencil was the safest.
Pencil is definitely the safest. So advice in forming strong relationships.
Yeah, forming strong relationships. So I don't know. So it's like asking a diver, like, how'd you do that flip? They're like, I don't know, I just tucked. And it's like, they can't articulate because they're just so naturally good at it. And so I think there is a certain innateness in someone's character, right? And how they're going to interact with someone.
Yes.
So I think there's that. But I think there's also a certain amount of vulnerability that you have to have in any relationship to build trust, right? I mean, right, because like I'm not going to trust you unless I feel like you have skin in the game, and you're not going to trust me if I'm not equally participatory.
Of course.
And so I think that, and that's how I try and run my business too, and as an employer, is that like I was direct with you, and I still feel, slightly bad.
It was amazing.
But, like I'm going to give direct feedback, and I'm going to say, we're in this together. I'm here to support you. I'm here to make you better.
Pull your head out of your ass, but
yeah, this is harsh criticism, right? Like, and I think this is partly medical training too. Is like, if you can't get your act together as a doctor, you're going to kill people.
True.
And so like, we're in healthcare. Like, if you can't get your act together in a clinic, like people will be hurt. And so it's that, the directness of, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to make you better. And the reason we're doing this is to help people and to keep people safe. And so it's sort of that communal discussion of why we're all doing what we do. And it's not for a paycheck. And if you're working for me and you're only there for a paycheck, frankly, that's great. But I want somebody who has more and who has that sort of holistic view of how to care for people.
Well, there's two people in this world. There's the people that we are, and then there's the person that we reveal ourselves to be. Man, that sounded really good. Like, can I try that again?
Yeah.
You mind if I rewind that back? The person that you are and the person that you reveal yourself to be. And from the short time that we've spent together, I feel like you're as genuine as they come. So I appreciate your vulnerability, your authenticity, and your willingness to be on here. If people want to learn more about you, Allison, your practice, what you do, your blog, where could they go?
Yeah, read my blog. You can if you want.
Guys, there's really good nuggets in my blog.
There's like so many good things. Actually, half of it I'm proud of. Half of it I'm like, oof, it's out there. So my practice is Kansas City Direct Primary Care. And if you're not in the Kansas City area, direct primary care is the type of practice that takes insurance out of the equation. So you can Google that. There's some really good maps out there to find a practice nearby. The organization I'm part of, it's a very loose organization, but the group that did the big donation is the Midwest Dpc Alliance, so the Midwest Direct Primary Care Alliance. And what's really cool about that group is that we're not a super formal organization, and technically we're all, from a business standpoint, we're all competitors, right? But if we don't work together, to help people and to sort of change the system, we're all going to fail. And so it's a really cool collaboration of all of us clinics in the Midwest working together to provide better care for people.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's the Midwest Dpc Alliance. But my blog is hosted on my website.
Which is?
Oh, God, it's the longest URL ever. I'm embarrassed. It's kansascitydirectprimarycare.com. The reason being was when we first were incorporated, KCDPC was the Kansas City Doberman Pinschers Club. Ugh. And so
Confusion.
It was very confusing.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So anyway, we have the longest URL ever.
I'm just appreciative that you didn't say www.
It's HTTP.
Okay. So now first time we met, you talked about your blogging ability. You've pitched your blogging ability multiple times in this interview.
Don't.
I'm putting you on blast right now in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I know that the outdoors mean a lot to you. Mm-hmm. Every so often, roughly every month, if not more, we feature one fundamental. And that for you started this whole thing out by saying that you love the outdoors. Yeah. You love going outside.
Absolutely.
I would love to have you as a guest blogger talk about what the outdoors means to you, how others can incorporate it, and some of the experiences that you've had. Would you be open to do that?
Definitely.
All right.
Super
more information
important
to follow, ladies and gentlemen. Allison Edwards was our featured guest today. We, of course, are sponsored by Charlie Hustle, an amazing local Kansas City company that is super proud and an ambassador to our community. So feel free to visit charliehustle.com, swoop up a cool shirt, some joggers, whatever it may be. We're coming to you this week from Pro Athlete Inc., a company focused solely on employee culture. I, as always, am your host, Paul J. Long, speaker and founder of Fundamism. If you want to learn more about Fundamism, fundamism.com. And don't forget, pre-orders are now available, pauljlong.com/book. Portion of proceeds will all go to Noah's Bandage Project, supporting pediatric cancer research. Forward by Mr. Travis Kelsey, friend of the show. And ultimately, he's a guy. He's basically just is a really great guy.
Okay. I'll look into it.
She's going to look into it, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I wish you the best. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. And don't forget to have a little more fun in your day.
Thank you.